Call to order the budget workshop, Easton Board of Education, Tuesday, January 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Public comment. Do we have public comment? We have a public, which is nice, but do we have any comment? Yes.
Hi, Carolyn Oppenheim, 25 Heathy Ridge. I'm going to just reiterate, I guess, what I said last time. I know it can be difficult to get back things that we have lost, but the media specialist in this room, not being in this room, is a detriment to all children throughout the entire building. My kids in particular, but everybody too. So I would really like to have the board consider the way to get that back. I had no idea, how much of an impact it would have on the school in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Nikki Caldawi, Staples Road. I'm just going to reiterate what I said last week and really for the past couple years. Class sizes at Staples, it's been pretty consistent for the most part, and the numbers continue to go up. The fact that 8 kids moved into 1 grade in the month of January should really be a big indicator to us that people are moving in. If you keep shuffling all the teachers all over the place, they can't get their curriculum down. The teams don't have the cohesiveness. Kids are going from, going to a teacher who's not a new teacher, but a teacher who's been there but has to learn the whole new curriculum. And it's just unfortunate. It's not right for the teachers. It's not right for the kids. The fact that kids can't go to a library to get a book because the library is closed here, it's just not something like you can fathom. And I know you guys work really hard at keeping stuff in, and the extracurriculars, like the PTO is not going to pay for it for the 3rd year in a row. I was there the last 2 years. I know that they've already said they're not going to do it, and that's the stuff that keeps kids out of trouble. It gives them different avenues to show their talents, to get a sense of togetherness with other kids, and it's just really important. And I just hope that you consider bringing a bigger number to the Board of Finance, because if you look around us, Weston, yes, they might be a more affluent town, but smaller in size. They're going with a 5.55% increase as of right now. That's what they're bringing. And I just think, let the town decide. So I'm saying, so thank you for what you guys do. I know it's not easy.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Nope. Board member comment.
I'm pumped. Let's go.
Okay. Then I'm not going to say anything either. Okay. Discussion and possible action consideration of the 2020-2021 proposed budget. We all have notebooks. Well, we have notebooks. And within those notebooks is basically every line item that makes up a budget of currently over 17 million. It's, I think, part of our duty, responsibility. I think it's just good governance for us to take a critical look at those line items. Some will go swimmingly fast, and others will take a little more time. But so what I'm going to ask the board members to do is open up their Easton budget development proposed for 2020-21. And let's take a look. I'm going to ask you to look first at the function summary. In the function summary, there's two different summaries. One is called function and one is called object. And they show the same. They come up with the same number, but they just show it in different ways. And what we're looking at here is general instruction It's got a 5.25% increase. Kindergarten is down 5.15. That has to do with supplies, not with people. Humanities is up, etc. And so what but the whole thing comes down to 4.20% or a $700,000 increase. Now, since this was distributed, there have been some changes, and I think it would be worth our while before we get into the deep water to go ahead and talk about what those changes are. I think, Scott, you've put those things together, and so why don't we start from there?
So one of the changes is actually an error in the document. There's a number in there that should have been zeroed out. We did not catch that during budget development, that the number legitimately should be zero. That had inadvertently left $24,377 in the budget. Just so you're aware, it shows up in the 1,211 section, which is special ed certified staff. And there's a line item there, is for Helen Keller, that indicates degree changes. We compensate, additional compensation. When there's a degree change, the salary grid changes, so we call those out. There are none in the 2021 year. That number was a residual from the 1920 year. So that removing that number, that $24,377, would take the 4.2% increase down to 4.05%. Just by backing that number out.
Can you just give us a chance to find it?
Sure. Yeah, so you wanna go to your 1100.
Find the 1100.
Sorry, 1200, I apologize, it was 1200.
Okay.
1,200, okay.
There we go.
Yeah, the degree changes. It's 1200, 111.
Okay, so, object 111 salary certified, about 2/3 of the way down that 111, it says degree changes, $24,377, that should be zeroed out, which will obviously reduce the 746 by 24,000 by about 722. But that takes us from 700,000 down to what?
675, 933.
933, and the increase?
So 4.05.
4.05.
The second set of changes are as a result of Tuesday night's joint tri-board meeting, where the central office budget was passed at that point. It included some shift of personnel, so it results really in two changes to this budget. One of them a negative change, one of them a positive change. So the one change that
So we go to 2410?
I guess I would suggest going to 1200, 111 again. To start there, because the first change that will occur is in the certified staff for the 1200 function, special education.
Okay.
And the second line is 0.25 FTE, Director of Special Services, 42,075. That number is in the Helen Keller budget, which is the first 1200 page we're looking at here, location 11. And if you flip a couple of pages, you'll get to the exact same page for Samuel Staples. And you get to the 1200, 111 for Samuel Staples, and you'll see the exact same one, 0.25 of the
Right.
Director of Special Services. Each of those two lines will be zeroed out in this budget. And the reason for them being zeroed out is that the decision at the tri-board meeting was to make this role a tri-board, a tri-district role, and to make it a central office position rather than a district by district position. So the dollars are moving out of this individual budget and they're moving into the central office budget. So it's moving from one part of this budget to another part of this budget, but it's not a one-for-one. To just has to do with the way the dollars are divided. So that would remove those two entries, which is an aggregate amount of $84,150 out of this budget. And I'll give you the offset. The central office, which is, I think, 232999. So that number that currently sits there says 313,371.
Right.
There's an entry for each building, so it's the same again on the next page for setting staples.
Mhm.
That number will increase in aggregate for the entire district by 71,230. 71,230. So if we take the negative 84,150 we just discussed, add to central office 71,230, that's a net reduction of 12,920. So we had a reduction due to the degree changes that should have been zero of negative 24,377. We have a second reduction of the net regarding central office of negative 12,920. That brings the total year-to-year increase in the budget down to 663,013. 663,013.
And that's a change to the number on the at the bottom of the function summary
Right.
page, the 700.
Exactly, so that number that says 700,310 will now become 663,013, and that's a 3.97% increase over the 1920 budget. 3.97, yeah.
Keep this up, we'll be in the pink here just a minute. See if I can shut my phone
Should we
off.
explain in non-educational speak terms for the public what happened with the special ed director versus supervisor position? Yes, no?
Sure,
Slightly more basic term, more basic terms.
yeah, so, special ed program runs for, students can qualify, children can qualify for special services on the day they turn 3 years old if their disability has been identified. And then they can continue to receive services until they're 21 years old, unless they accumulate enough credits at the high school to graduate before then. So the continuum runs from 3 to 21. What we've had in Easton Reading Region 9 for quite a long time is a director for the pre-K through 8 programs in Easton and Reading. That's the job that Jen Del Conte currently has. She's the Director of Special Services, pre-K through 8 for Easton and Reading. Kara is our supervisor, the administrator just for Easton. And over in Reading, we have Jen Henkla, who's the supervisor just for Reading. But then Region 9, grade 9 through 12, or 9 through the age of 21, has its own director of special services, Patty Roscoe, and a department chair. So there are 3 people serving pre-K through 8, the director and 2 supervisors, and then at the high school, there's the director and a department chair, so 5 people. That's a unique setup because of our 3-district structure. The high school director, Patty Roscoe, who's a tremendously gifted educator, I'm sad to say for us, after 40 years, has announced that she's going to retire. And she deserves that. This created an opportunity for the 3 boards to think about unifying the program. And at Tuesday night, they elected to create a position of assistant superintendent for pupil personnel for special ed to run from the age of 3 to the age of 21. So this new person, this new position, will oversee the whole program. So we'll have we will recast the position that Patty at the high school currently has from director to supervisor. So we'll end up with not a director anywhere, but the administrator in charge of pupil personnel, a supervisor in Easton, a supervisor in Reading, supervisor in Region 9, and a department chair in Region 9. So it's the same number of people, but it's pulling together this program. So you're going to be 3 separate and distinct legal entities, unchanged, but the program can take a step towards being more unified. So that's what we're talking about. While I have the floor, can we look at the function summary? So there are 24 sections to the budget that we call functions. One of them is kindergarten. One of them is curriculum. There's one for the technology plan. There's one for the magnet schools. I think of it as chapters in a book. That adds up to our proposal that was $17,384,000, and it's just been adjusted. Just to help us understand special services, could you take your pens and look at function 1127. That's special services. So I suggest that you circle the proposed amount, $34,574. And then the one directly below that is function 1200 special ed. So I'd throw that one in too. And then below that is 1201, the pre-K program. Pre-K is really a program of special services. We run the 3s and 4-year-olds, the two age levels in our program, because they qualify for special services. But the law also says that a class of 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds cannot be more than 50% students with special needs. The other 50% is determined by a lottery for kids in the general program to come to preschool with us. Then just below that you have 1211, the excess cost adjustment. And you'll see here that it's reimbursing and taking money off of the cost by $20,666. That's money that we can apply to the state for relief when the cost of certain individual students meets a threshold. Then if you skip a couple more to 2140, now you're looking at psychological services. And then let's add in one more, 2150, speech services. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the functions in the budget. When I add those up, I get $4,395,283. And when I divide that by the total of the $17,384,000, I get 25% of the budget. So the reason I'm perseverating on this is I want to point out to us that 25 cents of every dollar is going to support the special services program, the special education. And all of special education is determined by law. Once we find a child eligible for special services, we create an individual education plan for that child. And then it's the job of the administrators to translate that into service hours. What kind of special services is the child eligible for? And how do we provide that? That could be one of 14, 15 different things. If the child has dyslexia, we would provide dyslexia training. If the child has a physical disability, we provide for that. Those service hours then get translated into our requests for people and supplies and materials and technology. And so part of what you'll do at some point is you'll unpack those 6 sections, and it'll be Jen and Kara's task to help you understand why they're asking for what they're asking. That means, my friends, that we're actually running the school system on 3/4 of what we're asking for. Where you're going to find everything else, the general population, the operations of the buildings and plants, electricity, all those other things. So you will, at some point in one of the workshops, want to understand special education because it's a big footprint in the overall programming. The difference between special ed and absolutely everything else is it's mandated by law. So you can't say, Jen, let's just pull 2 paraprofessionals and a behavioral technician and a teacher out of it as a way to reduce the costs. Because she'll say right back to you, service hours. We have to provide a certain amount to each child, and you need this size staff for that. Now you can pressure test her on that. Do you really need everything that you say you need? But you can't, so I caution us all against saying, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take a 10% cut everywhere. Cut everything by 10%. You can't cut this because you have a legal obligation to provide these services. While I happen to be taking over your meeting.
You're running out of time.
Yeah. Just
With a smile, you can say anything with a smile.
just a couple other things. The central office staff is now working in all 4 of our budgets. The central office budget, which we had pulled together and presented Tuesday night, which you had some changes to, which we're implementing. We've presented to Reading the proposed budget for Reading. You're working on the Easton budget, and just today we got our first look at the first draft of the high school budget. So we're trying hard to keep all of those in the right slots and corridors, but we will point out to you if we've caught any things that need to be adjusted. And then finally, and then I'll hand it back to my learned colleague to my left. In each of the previous times we, the administration, have brought a budget to you, we've brought you a point of departure. We haven't taken absolutely everything out of the budget. We've said, we know you're going to land somewhere here, so we're going to bring you some choices. Do you want to include this? Do you not want that? And so we'll come in at 6%, knowing that we're not going to get 6%. We're bringing you, it was 4.2, now it's 3.9. Okay. This year, we didn't do that. Jeff has shown you in the fall that for human resources only, if you just took the staff you had, you froze it, and you advanced it by contractual increments, you'd be moving into the 3.2 somewhere area. So I showed you last time we were here, 80% of costs have to do with people. What about the other 20%? Well, that's the difference between 3.25 and 3.9 something. So the reason I'm saying this is there are still some decisions this board has to make. I'm not issuing you an ultimatum, give us everything that's here or not. I'm just saying that you can't work on the former assumptions that there were some decisions for you to make. Do we want this? Do we not want this? We believe everything in this budget is something you need. That includes the restoration of the media specialist here at the middle school. I know that I speak for Dr. Pearson-Ugal when we are in complete accord. The middle school should have a librarian. We did not remove that by choice. I also am ready for you at some point to ask us, why do we need extracurriculars for the middle school program? Because we've restored that also. And I don't think anyone does question that, but you've got a more difficult task this year because there really isn't a lot of wiggle room in this budget. Thanks.
Okay.
And another thing.
No more things. Okay, so let's now turn the page to the object summary. That is, it says object summary. And I've highlighted some things that I would like us to look at. So that, again, this is about building understanding as much as it is about looking at the individual data. We have a certified salary increase of $454,000. That's a 6% increase. Now someone's going to say, now how's that possible? Because when you sat in front of us in October, you said that the increase was 1.93 or $318,000, so how did it get to be this number? It got to be this number because we're adding back some of the things that were taken away, and this represents more of a net number than it does just what we had last year. So there's some pluses that are in this number, and there are also some minuses that are in this number. And so that will be one that we'll look at. Also want to look at 112 salary non-certs. That's up 3.50, which is not huge, except that most of the contracts for the non-certified people was 2.25. So once again, the question is asked, how did it change? And it changed because we are putting back some people back into the budget that were taken out before. The next one is 114 other payments. That's up 20.37% or $73,000. If I'm looking at this budget, I want to know the detail. I want to understand why it's going up that much. 116 is curriculum work. Now it's a 73% increase, but in fact, what Stephanie is asking for is $12,480. I think it's fair to ask, what are we going to get for our $12,480? I'm going to guess it's math, just a wild guess, but I think we need to know what that is. To slide down a little further, you're going to see 270 and 271. We don't have to spend any time with that, other than to show the Board of Finance as well as other board members that we talked in December about what it's going to cost to provide updated and current medical insurance, health insurance for all of our people, and that came out to 9.45%, and so that is reflected in 270 and 271, the 9.45. It's a big number. It's $230,000, but it is what it is, and we're following the recommendations of the consultant that we hired, and also the information provided to us from Anthem Blue Cross, who helps provide information for us so that we can budget properly. The next thing I want us to look at is maintenance contracts. Again, it's not that it's a huge increase. It's $8,000, but the total that we spend in maintenance contracts is over $100,000. And again, if I'm on the Board of Finance, I'd like to understand that a little bit better. Heck, the Board of Education and the parents in town, I think, would also have the same interest. Next one is cleaning and repair services. That's up $22,000. Total spent is $90,000. I think we need to understand that more clearly. You turn the page. Travel and conference is $580. There's an increase there of 53%, which sounds just, what are you, nuts? We're taking a round the world tour. It's only $11,624, but again, I think what we'd like to understand is what are the conferences that you're interested in going to? How do we come up with $11,624? And how do these conferences better our teachers, better our administrators, and thereby bettering our children? 615 is maintenance supplies. Again, it's not a huge amount of an increase, $8,000, but it's an $80,000 line item, and $80,000 is a lot of money in these parts. So I think we need to look at that. I'm going to ask that we talk about 622 and 623. This is a request from our good friend Randy Hicks, saying, how is it that we have solar panels like nobody's business and our electricity continues to go up? Do we have to turn them on? I'm not quite sure what the deal is there, but it's It was interesting because on Tuesday night, we had a, in public comment, we had a gentleman that came up and wanted to talk to specifically Reading about putting in solar panels and how much money they were gonna save. And he mentioned that how Easton had done this. He didn't ask Easton what Easton thought of that, and I have no interest in, embarrassing the gentleman. But I think we have to understand why this isn't working better. And then the final one is 731, which is equipment non-instruction. That's only going up 272%. It's $12,000, but so what are we buying in non-instructional equipment that's costing us $12,000? And I think that's it. We've already covered central office and those changes, so that's our starting lineup. Now in the object detail, it's got 10,000 pieces of information that I think you can just move past.
Could I
Because
suggest how helpful it would be?
well, then you see something here that I don't.
So-
Oh, please do.
So, one of the ways that this can be very helpful to you would be, and I'll just pick a random one. So, flip forward a couple pages until you see the 118 on the left side, object number 118, which is overtime Peloton.
Where is that in object detail?
It's the third column in object detail.
It's the middle of the page.
I don't see what you're talking about.
Is over/double time?
In object details,
Oh,
third page.
118,
Yeah.
okay.
So, on your summary page at the top, you would have seen what is the sum at the bottom of this. You would see the 2021 proposed amount is $12,000. And you would see that the 1920 number was $10,000. So on the summary page, you would see 10,000 going to 12,000 for a total variance of 2,000. And you would say, well, where does that come from? So this is a real good way to start the investigation process, because you can look right above it and it'll give you the breakdown of where is the 12,000, where is the 10,000. So we can see in 1920 it was 5,000 per building, because one of these is in 11, 2600, 118. You could flip to that page. I'm not suggesting you do, but that would be the Helen Keller building operation and maintenance overtime area. And then you would see the second one is also 5,000, this is last year's budget, is the same for Samuel Staples. And then you would move to the right and see for 2021, it's 5,000 for Keller staying the same, no change, and 7,000 for Staples. So the $2,000 change we've now determined came from one building and not the other. So, and each of those are gonna vary like that, so it's like an index to the rest of the book, so you can unpack the top line and see what's the details. So it can be a way to pretty quickly, if you see a big number that changes, you may scan a change column like that and say, oh, this is really coming from two places, so let's look at those two places. And that'll get us close.
Scott, it took me a while to decode the locations.
Yeah.
Right? Is there a key or?
Well, it's in the upper left of the
Okay.
detail pages. If you look in the very upper left-hand corner of every detail page, it'll say 11 Helen Keller. Yeah, flip all the way back to the detail pages in the back here.
Yeah, well, so if we were to
It's
go
on some
to,
page- It's on every page. but it's
if
on
we were to
some
go
detail
to,
page.
let's go to section,
I think this may be something we can use as a reference going back
Absolutely.
to then look, to be able to look back and find out more information.
Yep. It
But
doesn't bottom out on it.
I think I'd like to use it for that purpose.
Yeah, I think actually everybody's saying the same thing. I think Jeff was saying we don't need to go line by line right now through this. We can use this as a reference. I think Scott was just pointing out like the way that we can use this as a reference, which I think we're all in agreement on.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, I'd like
So
to
do you
then,
wanna work through these ones you've identified?
well, I think we're about to.
Okay.
Levels of funding is the next section. And I think this is worthwhile to take a look and see specifically what is, what are we, what are we looking at? We're looking at increasing general instruction by 86,000. We are looking at adding back student activities at Helen Keller for 48,000. We have a special ed increase of 60,000, which I think we need to spend some more time understanding. And then there's some smaller ones with media ed service, technology plan, and we'll get into the detail. I mean, obviously we need to understand what these things are. And operation maintenance plant is 14,000. So the total of new or reinstated programs comes out to 227,657. And when you think about last year and the Board of Finance asking us to cut an additional $240,000 from the budget, taking us from where we were to basically cutting the budget in half. What we're talking about is reinstating those things for next year that were cut this last year. And the thought was that perhaps those cuts that happened last year were, in terms of the total dollars, the dollar cut was maybe a little hasty, and that perhaps, and I'll put it on myself, that if I had done a better job of explaining what the impact of making those kind of cuts would be, maybe we would have had a different conversation. I'm not sure. But trying to, I think it's important that we try to put back in terms of the programming that we had, because I'm not sure that well, I know that cutting those things wasn't ultimately wasn't the right decision. We can look at the recommended improvements, which are very minor. These are, we have improvements and we have the reinstatement program. The improvements is $1,500, which is obviously minimal, and the new and reinstated programs would be $227,000. So why don't we go and jump over to recommended programs, and let's cover back for everyone's edification what it is that we are adding back, or that we want to add back. These are basically the things that we ended up cutting last year. Media specialist, the dollar amount is $72,316. The recess supervisor, which is something which is new, is $71,881. Professional development, $6,400. We hop down to some of the other larger, I mean, again, there's nickels and dimes, and I call $350 for one thing or $500 for another as smaller items. But then we get to student activity, and there's the graduation coordinator, 8th grade government, art club, garden club, homework club, jazz band, math team advisor, newspaper club, peer leadership advisor, play director, music director, play producers, select choir advisor, student council advisor, track advisor, ultimate fall frisbee, ultimate spring frisbee, volleyball, weather club, and yearbook. So my question to, these are all, Sue, these are all yours?
Yes.
Are all of these active this year? And well, first off, are all of these active this year?
So I can give you specifics about that. The first one, graduation coordinator, is actually an operational stipend, so it should not be included as an extracurricular activity. That's a contractual inclusion.
You're right, yes.
Everything with the exception of homework club and newspaper club is actively, and track, I don't have a track advisor yet, but I might have it by the end of the year, but the two that I mentioned, Homework Club, is not running this year. But in addition to these, we have a contract, in the teacher's contract, if people want to propose a new club, they're paid an hourly rate, and the PTO has graciously, offered to fund those. So in addition to what you're seeing, we have an orchestra program after school, we have a debate club, and what's the third one? We have a foosball club, futsal club.
Oh, futsal, okay.
Futsal.
Indoor soccer.
Yeah,
Indoor
indoor
soccer.
soccer.
I'm glad we
I'm
don't,
not sure why
Not
we don't
mini
call
soccer.
it.
I'm glad we don't have a foosball.
I always mess up.
Futsal.
So, we're lacking two, but we have three others.
We can go over to Nikki's house down to the basement, and we can have foosball to our heart's content. So you said Homework Club is
Is not active this year.
Okay, and what's the other one? that you said?
Newspaper.
Newspaper. Okay, and track is currently, you got two people
I
here.
believe I have people lined up, it's a spring activity, so it's, not up and running.
Okay. What about your frisbees?
Oh, they're running.
Big one.
It's big. On Friday, after school, it's a big club.
Yeah, people do that.
30 to
huh?
40 kids
Okay.
each time.
I have,
Wow.
information on participation from
Yes.
last year, if you're
Okay.
curious to know about
I would
that.
be very curious, yes.
70% of the students last year participated in one or more activities. 39% participated in two or more. And 19% of the students participated in three or more activities.
So can you repeat that?
Say it again?
Do you mind repeating that?
Sure. 70% of last year's enrolled students participated in one or more activities. 39% participated in two or more activities. And 19% participated in three or more activities.
Okay.
I also have specifics if you're interested in, I have sliced and diced it many ways in terms of enrollment in each of the activities from last year.
Okay. And what offsets, to this 48, well, got a couple of bucks less now, but what are the offsets that would go against these numbers? I mean, the play, generally speaking, is a moneymaker. The yearbook could be a moneymaker, but that's
Year to year it changes.
year to year, that is trickier. I've spent 20 years in that business, I know how tricky it is. But, the plays over the last 10 years have been money makers to varying degrees. Are those dollars put against any of these costs?
No, that money is kept for the running of the next year's play because there's startup money that you need to invest.
Sure.
And that's offset by the ticket sales after the play happens. So from year to year, that money is kept in student activities where we then take to borrow and then reimburse with the sales of the tickets.
Okay. And so what's the net number at the end of the year?
Year to year it's different,
Yeah, of
depending on who ran it and the kind of play.
Right.
And I have to put my fingers on that, but it runs from making 2,000 one year, I think the lowest we've ever made is about 2. One year we had a negative balance. And then some years we've had like $8,000 take. So it's, it varies widely.
Okay. But there could be some money that can be used to offset some of this.
No, that doesn't sound like it.
Well, I think we need, we're just talking about the facts. I mean, what is it? What is the balance in the student activity fund at the end?
In the plays, in the play account right now, I believe I have around 10,000. Scott, I sent you that amount. Do you happen to have it, or should I dig through mine? I don't have that account,
Okay.
handy at the moment.
If you could, let us, just let us know so that we
Yeah, I
know
might
we're-
find it shortly.
Okay, okay.
So what time of year is the play?
The
Spring.
play's gonna happen in February, and we're gonna start, auditions in February, and the the show will be in April.
So what I was thinking about was timing. I mean, it doesn't sound like if this is gonna be needed to apply to get the show up and running, there's not gonna be a way for us to know how much there might, say there is a little bit, you know, there is something left over that we can apply, we're not gonna know that in time to make a decision. You know, we'd potentially be taking money out of something and risking it not being able to function properly if we take the money out now.
Well, we do,
Since we have no idea whether or not it's gonna be profitable and by how much, and what the upfront costs are gonna be, I don't know.
well, it all depends on what play you choose.
No.
If you choose, if you,
Which have been about more profitable.
Two guys and dolls every year.
yeah, if you do guys and dolls, it's gonna
Every
cost you
year.
just a little bit more than if you do, Tom Mix and Who Stole My Saddle.
Waiting for the dove.
What's next?
Special education. I think we need some understanding about the starting lineup in terms of what is the net effect in terms of personnel. In the presentation at the last meeting, we saw a screen and there were a couple of behavioral techs that were crossed off. There was a paraprofessional who was crossed off, and there was a new paraprofessional who was going to be added. It sounded to me like we'd have fewer people in special ed than we would, that rather than having more. Is this a net new, or have I misunderstood?
Which one?
It's function code 1200, it's a Keller, it's one special education paraprofessional. Now, it would make sense to me, given the 5th grade has a high number of special needs kids who will be moving to the 6th grade, that a paraprofessional who might be at Staples would then go and follow the kids to Keller.
Well,
If that's the case, then it's,
that is true, but also what we do is because we have behavior technicians and we have paraprofessionals and they perform different responsibilities.
Right.
We consider a behavior technician to be more restrictive than a paraprofessional. So in other words, a child that needs more management will get an EP.
Right.
A child that may need less management will get a paraprofessional. So in this particular case, we've been able to, the child has graduated from needing higher support to lesser support service, and that is reflected here.
then we should see then a deduct of one behavioral tech from the,
Or a parrot.
For that particular student, but for other students, that may or may not be the case. It depends on what the IEP calls for. There are students that may go the other way as well.
so we would have students that currently have one-on-one paras that would then need to move up to a behavioral tech?
Depending on the needs of the IEP and depending on what the data tells us.
Right.
That's PPT.
So I took a look at this today. At Keller, this budget says, we currently have a 1-year contract for special ed because we have a special educator on leave. So that person comes back, the person on the 1 year doesn't stay. And the person returning will be making more than the person currently filling the slot. We have decreased Keller by 1 behavioral technician, and we've increased by this special ed para educator. We've also increased the school psychologist by 1/5 at Keller. At Staples in special ed, we have the decrease of psychology by 0.2 because we've moved the assignment, so that washes out. We've decreased special ed by 1 para, and we've decreased the behavioral technicians by 1 technician. We've increased the social worker by 0.4. And I believe that's all of the changes in the special ed world.
in the PowerPoint,
It's not every page.
I got it here.
It's like every other page.
They're right here.
okay, well, do
Yeah,
you,
I got it right here.
okay, you have, let's go to specials. Oh, you have special services. We have one paraprofessional is crossed out.
From Staples.
Right. We have one behavioral tech crossed out,
From Staples.
Yes.
Yeah.
and we have a basis behavioral tech cut out of
Keller.
Keller.
Yep. Plus one, paraprofessional.
It's a body. I understand.
Social worker.
I mean, it should be that a wash in terms of bodies, if a behavioral tech is out, but a para is in,
Body wise, yes, that is the one.
Right, but this budget won't show the eliminations, it's only gonna show what's in, so it's not, you're not gonna find here the subtraction of the BT, the subtraction of the para, the subtraction of the BT, you're only gonna see this plus 15,838 for the paraprofessional.
well, we have to show the deductions.
So this is the new and reinstated, this portion, is that what you're saying, Tom?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be in this section because it's new and reinstated. We'd go to the total budget or the section of that.
Okay.
But even if we were to go to function 1200 special ed, object 112, salary non-certified. The budget's only gonna show you the positions we're looking for.
Well, it should,
Right.
right.
So instead, so currently this year, we have 3 behavioral technicians in Keller. The budget for Keller, function 1200 special ed, object 112 salary for non-certified staff, you'll see it says two behavioral technicians. So it doesn't say, there's not a parenthesis,
Minus
it was
one.
3 before.
Yeah.
Well, I've got last year's budget.
Can I just mention that would be infinitely helpful if it was possible in this program to add a column that shows what was,
18, 19? Yeah.
was last year.
Okay, it's earlier, right? It's in some of the summary level ones, it'd be great to have the detail, but
But to have to go back and forth, I mean, it's not, I don't even know if
It-
it's possible in
we-
this programming.
Let's
but-
see now, so the very good news is that Phoenix, which clearly you're looking at something that was written in the 90s, has been sunsetted, and we are getting into the new version of this, so going forward, you'll have something much friendlier to navigate.
Well, what I'm looking at here, last year, 2 basis behavioral techs, which was an increase of 1 Keller. And this budget, again, looking at Keller, it's got 2 basis behavioral techs.
Yeah, but during the year, we probably added, because of, kids enrolling, what is it we're trying to understand here?
Well, it looks like,
the net change, right?
it looks like a wash, and that there would be no net change. And yet what I see is, we've got we have one special education, paraprofessional, a paraeducator at 15,838, and we have 2 behavioral techs, and then 3 other special education paraprofessionals. So I don't see, although
Okay, so, on the Parker document, this is why this is so difficult, because nothing is static. When you set the budget and sent it to the voters, there were 2, that's what you're seeing in the current year budget, there were 2 basis behavioral technicians for a total of $69,125 as of the 1st of July. But by December 19, we've had people move in, or kids become eligible, or changes, and so now you've got the addition of a basis teacher. So now Keller's got, in the middle column of the Parker document, you've got 3 basis behavioral techs. Adding from 69, it goes to 87,633. So now you come back and you say, we're looking for 2 basis teachers here, which is 66,320, because people are in different years' experience. So you don't see the subtraction of the VT, you see the addition of this reclassification, if you want to call it, of the paraeducator.
I think the other thing that's important for people to understand, and certainly Jen, you can speak to this better than I can, but that the annual review process is a year-long, ongoing rotation through students. And some kids come, I don't know if this is true of this district as well, but in my experience, some students come up for annual review in October, some come up in January, some come up in March, some come up in April, and at those times, every month on a rotating basis throughout the year, you can have program changes, and either an increase in need, a decrease in need, a shift in program, it's like trying to, nail down a moving target.
Yeah, it is
All
that's
year
very
long.
true. Depending on when you're initially classified, or initially identified in March, we are required by law to have the following March. But it is very possible that one child could have 5, 6, or 7 meetings throughout the year, because we are constantly collecting data. And as we see the needs of the children change, we're very aggressive to come back to the table to amend the IEP. And, sometimes that means, having that celebration that they no longer need X, Y, or Z services. And other times you say, wow, the data time that we provide more support at that time. So you're right, it is an evolving door, and also we have to look at parent requests, when they want to identify or they have concerns about their child, we're required by law to meet on and at least consider whether or not they should move forward with testing.
Okay. Going down further, you're asking for a point for social worker infants. Help us understand.
I think that is really twofold. The first piece of that request is we are required to provide what's called SRBIs. I work very closely with the building principals and with Dr. Kirsten Duval to make sure that we provide services to children that are at risk of being identified for special education. SRBI is the gateway to special ed. If we can provide services early, that the students don't get referred. They can stay within the general population. Mental health and trauma is something that's very real in our schools today. And we're actually seeing an uptick in students being referred to special education because they have executive functioning challenges, they have significant behavioral challenges, and these are the students that are disruptive in the school setting. So it is really important that we have those resources in place to support those students to prevent a referral to special ed. Often what we find is if we don't intervene early, these are the students that will drive out of district placement because we didn't provide them with the supports and the tools they need. The behavior escalates to a point where we actually have to consider another placement. So this really is trying to support those students.
Okay. So you're telling us that it's an uptick based upon student need. It's an uptick based upon student need.
It's an uptick based on student need, and there is new legislation that really speaks to social emotional learning. And we have these school climates that we have to be concerned about. We have social emotional needs that we have to address.
Is it fair to say that it's not only sort of the right thing for the ratios and sort of the demand, but it's also a smart investment because it can help head off unnecessary placements?
That's correct.
Yeah. That's right.
And what is a point to Orton Gillingham services?
That is something that we were hoping that all 3 districts would partner in on. We have a special education teacher that we hired last year that has significant training in Wilson, to support our students with dyslexia.
Right.
We're also finding that, the state has, urged us to move away from a specific methodology, to move more Orton-Gillingham approach, which is what we call structured literacy. And we really need support in providing our staff with structured literacy. So this position really would help, support the students that are identified with specific learning disabilities with dyslexia.
Okay, it's a question.
Sure.
Would we be better served by hiring a consultant for a year to bring our staff up to speed so that they would be able to do this? As opposed to hiring a person and have all the costs associated with
No,
the hire?
I would say no. I think that's actually gonna cost you more money in the long run. Could be the fees that a consultant would charge and, the fact that what we find is the best model to use when working with special education children we also is that coaching model. And we really need somebody that has that level of expertise. We do utilize CERC as another resource, but they're not on staff and they can't, be here to support the student, parents, and teachers.
We often talk about building our internal capacity to
That's correct.
service these kids, and I think, and there's also, through some conversations I've had with parents, there's definitely a concern about and appreciation for the increase in earlier identification of dyslexia. And I think a cohort of the community that is very interested in seeing an increase in this specific Orton-Gillingham training in dyslexia.
Again, I'm not arguing the need, I'm just looking at the methodology that we're going to use to try to provide that service. And are we better served by teaching our folks how to do it so they can execute it? Or are we better served by hiring someone that would, I don't know if it's oversee it, or, now, is this someone that we're also sharing with Reading?
This is somebody that we're looking to share with Reading and with, Region 9.
Okay, so this is a 0.6 position?
He's actually a 1.0 total,
Okay.
but because we,
Oh, it's 0.2 per school? Okay.
no, it's
0.2 to Easton.
for the Easton.
0.2 for Easton, 0.2 for Reading, 0.2 for Region
No,
9.
it's
No, it's-
0.4, 0.4, and 0.2.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question about the social worker?
Sure.
Because wasn't there also a social worker increase somewhere else? Was it at state? Is this the only social worker increase in the budget, or am I remembering a social worker increase also
We had
at
a so,
SSES?
we had a social,
This is the one. Okay, there's not another.
yeah, it's another, yeah, this is 12, so that makes it. We added a social worker years ago, but, this is something different. Okay,
May I, and if it's not something you can discuss because of individual students, the platform swing and stand. Let me just explain what, it's right under the Orton-Gillingham services,
Yeah,
it says
that
platform
is,
swing and stand.
That is a piece of equipment that we use for students who have, what we call dysregulated, they're either students on the spectrum or they're students that, have physical disabilities. We currently have one, but we needed a big piece of equipment that requires, we have to transport it between two buildings. And, the manpower it takes to hook it up and everything else is quite cumbersome.
I nominate Jeff.
thanks. Now, we did have one of these as part of our basis program at SSCS. I'm gonna say 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So is this?
This would be a
So this
second
is the second one.
So that there's one per,
We'd like to have one in each building.
Well,
One at
this,
Stevens and
well,
one
this
at-
says 12, this is SSCS. There is one at SSCS now, and they're asking, 12 is saying.
is it being moved between buildings right now and it happens to be
The
here?
one that I believe you recall was moved here.
Yeah.
And that's why they need one at Staples, so we have one now, we're.
Okay,
Maybe a longer.
that's fine, I just,
So there's one now currently at Keller, and you don't wanna have to disassemble it and move it
Yeah.
back and forth by
no, you don't
providing.
wanna do that. Okay, cybersecurity audit. On the technology plan, could we just give that to John to do? Take care of that for us,
Or the kids.
or the kids,
High
yeah.
school, the high school kids. That's what Gretchen just said.
We did discuss in the tri-board in October an update in regards to cybersecurity. So we've continued to look at, there are a number of initiatives that we would want to continue to build out. And so there's a budget that's put in place, this $4,000 for the Easton district is also replicated in Reading and region, so it's an aggregate of 12,000. We would have additional activities, additional programs that we would begin to implement from cybersecurity.
Okay, there is also a line here for $4,000 for start time study. This was discussed at the tri-board meeting, so that's why I'm bringing it up. There is some interest, to better understand, the impact of if we started school later, would kids get more sleep?
Well, we know for sure that if we start later, so we're actually.
Well, I'm not sure we know that.
No, we do know that. There's been 11 national studies now. And for us, in the region, Newtown, Norwalk, Wilton, Ridgefield, Greenwich, and a couple other towns have, Westport, have done the study to make the case for, I think where we all start with this is, well, if you start school later, those darn teenagers will just stay up later. But that's not actually what the research, the real empirical research is bearing out. So we want to look at the logistics of, we want to study the logistics of what would it take to bring Barlow in line with that. And it does seem like over some period of years, the whole region is, if the athletic conference goes there, then everyone's gonna have to go there at some point. So we wanna get a study group, a focus group going. The question, as I see it, comes down to, is it feasible to get all the kids into school at a reasonable time that doesn't disrupt the community, where the high school starts at 8:30? What do you do with the elementary and middle? Could those kids go on the same bus, and then you have 2 bus runs and it actually saves you money? Or do you need to have some other configuration of buses? Do you have to return buses to the fleet to get everybody there in a timely way? So it's really a logistical question, and the 5 buildings need to do this together. So we're looking for, that modest amount to get us started on looking at that.
Is the impetus because everybody else is doing it, we need to look at doing it?
No.
Or are you getting, is it community driven?
There is interest in the community. There are people advocating at the other board meetings for it, but it's also just the science has matured to a point where you have compelling evidence that it's to the benefit of the kids. Doesn't mean their grades are gonna rocket up. It means they're gonna have a better, healthier experience. And as a consequence, good things flow from it. Which is why we want to study it and report it to you on.
Okay.
If you have a pressing need to look into this right now, Google Norwalk's start time study. It's an excellent 30 pages of really well done, well researched, compelling evidence on the topic.
Professional, next thing is 2410, school administration, professional development, $3,000. My question here is what and where?
And so that particular $3,000 is over at Keller. The 580 line is for conference and travel.
So that's part of the.
That would be part of it, and that is up to $33,400. Half of that is training that must take place in special ed. So you asked, you wanted to look at that. if you were to look into the 1,200, 580 for special services, you see it's training that we have to send our educators to. A lot of this takes place at Cooperative Educational Services in Trumbull. We're a member to there to get the best cost of that. But so this is almost half of it is we've got a good $5,000 for multi-sensory reading certification for teachers. That's the special education need that, and that's at Staples, at Keller, and then other PD for special services. So it's 11,000 of the 33 is for. I feel like Bernie. 11,000 of the 33 is for. Is for.
You might want to get over that.
Is for the special educators at Staples. The 580 for special ed for Keller is $6,000, same thing. So that's the biggest chunk of it. This $3,000, Sue?
Is for me, for the school. Years ago, I attended what I thought was a transformational professional development for myself. It's a conference called Learning in the Brain, and over the years,
Learning in the what?
Learning in the Brain,
Okay.
out of Harvard mostly. And I was able over the years to send 4 staff members to different types of conferences from Learning in the Brain. And I would like to be able to send more staff members to a conference from that, for that purpose, to help us learn, help children understand how their brains work, how they learn, and the more people I can get trained within the school here, the better I can get that done.
How long ago was that you went?
I've gone to a few of them over the years.
Because I do recall this. I do recall this. Okay. All right. And from a.
Oh, can I just, I have information, if we could back up just a bit.
Sure.
I was able to pull up, to answer your question about, the money for the play. So I have a chart from the last, 12 years that we've had plays here,
Okay.
and I have the expenses and the revenues.
Okay.
And depending on who the director is, they had very different styles. So the most recent director, who had it for about 6 years, Diana Canova, was a professional who knew how to produce her own plays. But the other years where we had more expensive outlays, so the outlays ran, the ranges from about 1,600 under Diana Canova, money going out before the play happened, to a range in the teens, in the low teens. So the current balance in student activities is between 10, for the play, for drama, is between $10,000 and $11,000.
Okay.
So I met a few weeks ago with the current group who's going to produce this year's play, and I told them they have $10,000 to get this play up and running, to hopefully bring in tickets, but I don't think they're gonna spend that much, but I don't know. They're not gonna write their own play like Diana was able to do, so they're gonna buy the rights to a play.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. And where we, the bottom of the ninth inning here is, what's my place?
The fiscal fund.
Is the, right, okay, here we go. We've got 2 things that are kind of in the have to. One is a window security improvement. Sue, can you tell us what that is?
So that's recommended in both schools, I believe, from Officer Tibbles.
It only shows up.
It's already present at the school.
Was this the film?
Yeah.
Yeah, the film. Oh, I didn't know you had that already. So Officer Tibbles did a security audit and recommended that we get a new film on certain windows and door areas, for security purposes.
Okay.
And that's the quote for that.
And the hazard material remediation in the locker. That's not required until 2025, but if we have to do it, we might,
That's the thing.
we should do it. And the last one here is pressure wash. I'm sorry, this isn't that funny. At Staples, 731, pressure wash and wet vac the bathroom
It's a machine.
for $4,000.
We have a lot of bathrooms at St. Staples,
Hmm.
and they're all tile.
Yes.
So when the school was built in 2005, part of the funding included these two very large machines called Kaivac machines. They don't make Kaivac machines anymore, but what it essentially is a power washer that also is a wet vac that cleans up all of the water. Over the years, one of them died, so we were able to use the parts of that one that was dying to repair the one that we currently use. The pump on the one we currently use is starting to fail. So we need another power washer. We have 4 student bathrooms. We have all the bathrooms in the kindergarten we were in. We have
Preschool.
3 or 4 adult bathrooms, preschool bathrooms, nurses' bathrooms, we have a lot of bathrooms. So for a custodian in the evening, we only have the 4. To manually do all of those bathrooms, all that custodian would be doing is bathrooms and would not be able to do anything else. The facility is just too large.
So this is something that's done on a daily basis.
Oh, daily. We have little boys, Jeff.
I resent that.
Can I request one?
Well, that changes the tone. Okay. All right, let's move into 1100, if we could.
Can I ask about the
Kind of the main event here. People? Yeah, no, go ahead.
gymnasium padding?
Oh, did I miss that? I'm sorry, thank you for that.
Well, it's not, it's in parentheses, so and I'm assuming the parentheses are sort of, we didn't put it in, but it would be really great if we could.
Yeah, we want to.
That's correct.
But, so it's 0 because it's already been
Right.
taken, it's not being considered, but it's here, to indicate what we were hoping to get.
Is there any padding, I'm sorry.
So
is
there's
there
some
anything
padding,
there?
so, yes, so you know the whole gymnasium project last year. And the contractors took down all the padding, and replaced some within the money that we were allowed. So there's 2 walls that are unpadded at this time. And it would be wonderful to have it fully padded around the gymnasium, so that was what that request was for.
Okay, so the padding underneath the baskets at both ends,
That exists.
that exists.
But they also play basketball the other way as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots of activities that use,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, well, we've never had padding on those other ones.
we used to have,
We had
bleachers
Bleachers,
a
yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
But now they're solid walls, you know, and, I think it would be in the best
We
interest
could
to
be-
try to get padding. If not
Okay.
this year, we'll try again next year.
Okay, I understand that. All right, let's move to 1100, general instruction. You can see, at 111 salary certified, the addition of the media specialist at 72,316. Now, Scott, a question for you. This does not include medical.
Correct.
Our medical increase that we were projecting was 9.45, and that's what's in the budget. Shouldn't it be higher because we're gonna add the medical for this person as well?
So last year, I did significant work with Brown and Brown to redo the way that we did the projections for the medical. And you may recall, we had a lot of movement between different functional areas, taking money up, taking money down. And that really was to kind of right size the medical portion of each of the different areas of the budget.
Yeah.
When we take a look now this year at what should the amount put aside by the board be to cover payment of claims and administrative fees and those types of things, Brown & Brown does a very similar projection, a bottoms-up projection, and determines an aggregate amount that would be necessary projected amount necessary to cover the next year's claims. In discussing with them how to apply it to the budget, so I guess the first step is to reach an agreement on what the bottom line number is. And in that case, it's what worked out to be the 9.45%. In terms of applying it back to the budget, we've really elected not to add a little bit in this line, take a little bit out of that line for the incremental position or moving in and out. Really, one of the big reasons for that is materiality. There's certainly a projected cost associated with it, but in the scheme of the, I don't remember the aggregate amount for this district, but say 2 million.
2.3 million.
So on the basis of the 2.3 million, this is less than around a year. It's infinitesimally. It's probably on the order of about 60. It's not nothing, but we're not adding a whole lot of positions, not deleting a whole lot of positions, so it's not really gonna move that number. It's not great.
Okay, all right. We move down, and for those of you keeping score, comparing this 1,964,053 to last year's 1,901,145 represents a 3.3% increase. We had talked about this being a 3.1% increase. 1.93% increase. So I'm guessing that we're gonna catch up in some other areas, maybe it's Staples, maybe it's some other place that's going to drop it down. I'm sorry, it's 3.3 with the $24,000 in degree change. It's 2.0 without. It's a $38,000 increase, which is just about where we said it was gonna be. I'm sure someone will do the math going, well, you said one thing, how can it be something different, just my guess. So, well done on that. We have the recess supervisor, 15 hours a week, $7,182. Last year it was asked for, and what was asked for was $8,100. Is there some reason for the difference, or just a different number?
You looking at me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I didn't calculate that line, I just put the request for the recess, so.
I see. Well, is it, just doing the math, is
Especially we picked a lower hourly rate.
Oh, probably because it would be like, for example, the cafeteria supervisor, she's been here a long time. So the idea, you're right, the recess aide would be a new person.
Right.
Who would get a lower per hour rate.
All right. Are you planning, I mean, this is it really 600 hours? Is it 15 hours a week times 40 weeks?
Well, it's 3 hours a day, 180 times.
Yeah.
Okay, 180, all right, okay, that's fine. We turn the page to other, to object code 114, other payments certified. We have a fairly significant increase year over year of about $25,000. And taking a look at it, comparing it to last year's budget, longevity, which was 17,766, has gone up to 35,146. Do we have that many people that
So I'm
jumped?
gonna speculate, and that would have been calculated by our HR manager, but I think there's two things going on there. I believe that the longevity kicks to a higher number when you cross a higher threshold. I need to look up. So you're getting a certain amount from, say, 20 to 25, and then it's a higher amount. So you have some people moving to the higher longevity, and then you have people moving onto longevity as they meet the year's experience threshold, but that's just a speculation.
Did we have returns from leave of absence?
You did have some people coming back who've been,
That would do as well.
who've been, right, so you have, say, the special educator here, who's on a leave of absence and replaced with a person who's not getting longevity, so probably a combination of those things.
Okay. Summer pay for scheduling is $8,000. Can somebody help me understand what that is? Is that scheduling special ed? I mean, it doesn't fall under special ed, so I'm not.
Yeah, I can explain
Summer
that.
is scheduling.
We, in a small school like we have, to maintain, let's see how I can say this, harmony within the classes. We have, very specific requests by counseling department to keep, groups of students in certain groups. I'm trying to be politically correct here, but we wanna make sure that we
You don't
have
have to
the
do that with
classes
me.
balanced properly to optimize learning in our classrooms. And so, we do have, we pay, somebody to come in the summer, from the counseling staff to help, also helps with, special ed scheduling as well, to go over the whole master list and make sure that, kids are placed properly according to increase.
And
So
again,
Billy's always fighting with Harry, so let's not put Billy and Harry
We
in
gotta
the
keep
same
Billy
class.
and Harry apart, and it's very tricky.
And the counselor also does new registration.
I'm sorry, does somebody have a child named Billy or Harry? I'm sorry.
Both my kids are doing
Okay, so that doesn't take place as a matter of,
It can't.
Can't.
It can't. It can't take place before the school year ends.
Right, it has to be after the year ends, it has to be done by a person because the system doesn't know that Billy and Harry don't get along.
okay, that's it.
yeah, and for special ed, you have to look at service hours too, which add to the complication of the scheduling process.
Okay, okay. Last year, we didn't have a team mentor. I'm sorry, I got the wrong. 1100. Don't do this at home, kids.
You would need a team mentor for a new hire.
People
So,
year 1 and 2.
if
Okay,
you
so-
have new teachers in the building this year that you didn't have previously, then you need the team mentor.
Because last year we had a 0 there, and now we have 1,250.
Right, so if we're anticipating hiring a new teacher, then you build that in as part of it.
Okay, and your team leaders have gone up in
It's contractual.
Keller from 4 to 5?
Well, that happened years ago. We had, we've had a support team leader, support services group, team leader for years.
Well, in last year, it was team leader stipend for 4 at $34.47, and this year it's team
That
leader
was
stipend for 5.
On Cordero then.
There's currently 5?
It's been 5 for years now,
Okay. All right.
by contract.
Okay, on the next page, 1100, Helen Keller, and this has gotta be a funky something. But last year we had medical coverage for non-certified staff members was $75,000. So as the budget item, the year before it was 26, but it shows up here as 75. And then this year, it was 27. I mean, I love that it's $50,000 less, but I wanna make sure that's right.
Is it 271?
We just have this.
All we're doing is just flipping a page.
Right.
I know, I was at the
Jeff
top of
has,
the page.
is able to compare, he's got last year's
Okay,
stats.
I'm looking at
I
last
was at
year's,
the top of the page.
I'm just looking at last year's stuff, but medical, 271, medical insurance, non-certs, for this upcoming year is 27,000. Last year it was 74.
Last year was 24.
The year before it was 26. It went in at 74.9. It shows here again as 24. So I'm just putting that last year, when the budget went through, it went through at 74, and now it's this number. I mean, I'm happy that it's lower, don't misunderstand, I just wanna make sure it's right.
Just trying to look at
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Seeing.
You're looking at the January 10th version of this?
Right.
It's probably, there might have been a later version.
Right, and I,
Oh.
and I understand that, but when you see that to that, it went from here to here to here.
Well, it didn't actually go there, this wasn't the front of
Mhm.
it, this was. That's passed.
So this isn't right.
Yeah, it was right in January.
Okay. All right, let's flip the page again. We have under new and, we have 580 conferences and travel for $6,400.
Yeah, because you zeroed it out as part of the final,
Yeah,
we'll
last year.
characterize it, the reductions that we took at the last time.
Mhm, okay, so I think we covered that. And that's our Helen Keller General Instruction. And then go to Staples. Okay, this year we're saying that the 1.0 world language teacher is getting a 3.9% increase.
You have a teacher, one of,
It's going from 90,691. If you don't think this is tedious, you're right.
could be a degree change, I don't know.
Probably three.
I think it is, I
Yeah.
seem to remember.
Okay, well, someone's gonna ask, so we should probably have the answer. Okay. And then phys ed teachers. You have 2 phys ed teachers in Keller that made 153,688 last year, and this upcoming budget, they're making 169,069.
No, that's Staples.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, Staples, that's Staples, sorry about that. It's a 10% increase for the 2 phys ed teachers.
I don't do the salaries, I just put in the number of FTEs.
I think it is another
Okay.
degree change.
So it's gonna be driven by step and degree, GWI.
Okay, well, GWI I get, I mean, if it was a degree change, then that makes sense, but, again, someone's gonna ask the question.
It is 092, yeah, so this is the additional, this is the 6th year, so he's moved a column on the pay grid from masters to masters plus 30.
Okay. Turning the page again. Last year, we didn't have a district mentor. This year we have one. Is that under the same guise?
Yep, is your plus one,
A new teacher? Okay.
in the kindergarten?
Team member stipend, down further on that line. Was 0 last year, there's 1250, same idea?
Right.
Okay.
Jeff Quigley, just
Sure.
again for everybody here who's like sticking with us. We're at, this reflects adding a kindergarten teacher for next year's incoming class. The reduction of a 4th grade teacher for the current 3rd graders that are moving up to 4th grade. And an additional, increasing the number of 3rd grade teachers for next year for this year's 2nd grade moving up to 3rd grade.
Right. So you think of it as a reassignment
Yeah.
of one teacher coming out of one grade level, another teacher going into the 3rd grade level, may not be the same person, and then an increase to reflect the kindergarten numbers, right? So there's also an increase of one kindergarten para.
Right, that's on the top list. I should do it. shotgun?
I feel like, we need a mascot that rotates
That's
the,
right.
through the aisles, and we can like fire t-shirts into
Pump
the
everybody up.
baskets.
I feel like
Songs
that's what-
play every few minutes.
If anybody else likes to do this, you're welcome to it. I've got, the Lincoln one. So with me. Okay, we have nothing on 1100s, at the top of the page is 221, that all according to Hoyle. Maintenance contracts, is all according to Hoyle, the next page. And we flip it over, and that's 1100. So what we're looking at for next year is adding back the media specialist, adding a kindergarten teacher, because our projections are we're gonna have 90 kids. Well, there's two projections, one is 90 and one is 94, anyway, you're not putting 94 little ones in 4 classrooms, so that'll be expanded to 5. The third grade, which is third grade's our smallest class, right?
Currently, yeah.
So they will stay with 4 sections, and, so we'll have 5 sections, kindergarten, first, second, 4 sections in third,
4, 5.
I'm sorry, kindergarten, first, second, third, 4 sections in fourth, and currently we got some, feedback from some parents that cutting the section and for next year's 5th grade might be tantamount to doing something really crazy, so, we'll leave 5 sections in grade 5. So we're moving back to what we had in the past.
Extracurriculars.
Actual, yeah.
Yeah, the extracurriculars are in there. That's gonna be a real challenge, but, you don't ask, you don't get, so, that's in there too.
So may I ask, if it's okay? to ask
Go ahead,
a question?
yeah, please.
How is it going in PE? We cut the
Great
para,
question.
we still have the 2 teachers, and now there's 1 aide, is that our
No,
current?
there's no
what's-
aid, it's
There's
just
no aide at all?
one teacher downstairs. And in middle school, we require the students to change their clothes, before, in the locker rooms before going into the gymnasium. So, the teacher has to wait in the hallway until everybody comes out of the locker rooms. Because we can't have kids going into the gymnasium and not being supervised. So it has cut down on instructional time slightly, and the teachers have also had to change around the units that they're teaching. And for example, the physical fitness test used to be done in tandem, you have 2 people, so forth, and we're gonna have to go back to maybe those days that I remember, where kids are sitting around the gymnasium while a teacher has to do the physical fitness test for a student. You have to watch in time and all this. So it has slowed down and changed the curriculum slightly, because of just being 1 person, for the purpose of proper supervision.
And that was, somebody refresh my, it was approximately $17,000?
The
For
paraprofessional,
Paraprofessional, something like that, 17 to 20.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a request, but I would propose adding that to the list of reinstatements. At least to consider it. And see what that does to the numbers.
Well,
I think it was another unfortunate, and I don't know where we wanna rank order and file is in terms of some of the other things we're trying to put back, but I was surprised to see it not return to the table, other than I know you're trying to be very careful and cautious and provide us with as lean a budget as possible. I think it was another unfortunate loss in that.
Well, we
cycle
can, we
next
can,
year.
we can decide as a board, if you wanna add it. I think, I don't hear any safety issues.
No, you'd have a little, slightly less instructional time and more careful planning for activities that are not, that the teacher can observe everyone playing at once.
Okay.
And maybe teaching kids more patience as they have to wait for certain activities, for example.
Is it worth 20,000? I'd say 20. It seems to me it was 20. Okay.
So 17-ish.
17 to $20,000. Is that a good investment of our money? I understand it's something that was taken away, but I guess the question is it really in the best interest of where we spend our money? Here's the challenge. You add something, then the question is, either you're just going to increase the cost of doing business, or you have to take it away someplace else. And I think it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be hard from everything that I'm, trying to stay on top of, and to listen to what's going on, which goes beyond this room in terms of the number of folks in town. There's a lot of concern because the education budget's 70% of the total budget of the town. And I think we have to be mindful that we have an entire public to serve as it relates to taxes. If it was safety, if it was safety, then I would agree with you. I don't feel like that's something we should consider. I think it's gonna be a big enough challenge to get back the things that were taken away last year, that are the big things, the media specialists, making sure we keep class size where it is. So, but it's open to discussion, and what do you all think?
I think you all know how much I value physical education and getting kids to move and all that. I also think we do have to be very careful about doing the things that are on us, like restoring the media specialist, the recess aid, I think these are things that either desperately need to be restored or have been on the list for many years. And I think that the places where we are investing this year, specific to the data analyst and the other places where we are investing, the changes that we're suggesting for the structure of special education will pay dividends. And I could see this as the kind of thing we could actually afford in future years if through the data analyst, if through the special education changes, we're able to realize the benefits of that. But I fully appreciate that having that aid would be better, right? Having that person to help with the physical education would absolutely be better than not having it.
I mentioned it because I've heard, folks have mentioned that expressed concern about the loss, without kids going outside, less activity during the day of gym. To me, it was in the vein of keeping kids at this age healthy from all angles, and that if there was a reduction, I was thinking kind of akin to the aid that allows for kids to get out.
And 75% of kids who start soccer, baseball, etc., by the time they're age 13, they've dropped it. So many kids in our community participate actively in soccer at age 5, and baseball and lacrosse and so many of these sports, and by the time they're through middle school, they're not doing it. 75% of them have stopped. That's awful.
You see this in our in our accountability index rating, one of them is what percent of kids meet the goals for the 4 elements of physical fitness, which is running, flexibility, body strength, and each of those 4 individually has a high percentage, but the raise your eyebrows thing is the percent of kids who meet all 4 of those is for a town that is a country town. It's remarkably not where it should be. But this, it gives me an opportunity to remind you, this is a different budget. If we were doing it the way we've done it the last several years, we would have brought you 6%, it would have included these things, and then you could decide, do we leave it in or do we take it out? This is a good example of when you really press Sue and you say, is this absolutely necessary? Does it have to go in the budget? She'll reluctantly say, absolutely necessary, no. Would I like it? Yes. Would it be good? Yes. But it's 17, 18 grand that you don't absolutely need to have. But you don't have to make the decision tonight. I think it's something to put on your when you get down to closer to actually setting your number, do you feel like you can put it back in?
And I think the other thing we need,
Put it out there.
Yeah, no, it's good, that's what you're supposed to be doing.
the other thing that I think we need to discuss is the media specialist. Well, let's just talk about this place. The fact that this place is by Sue's, thank you for that detail last time, that this place is closed 30% of the time was never a consideration that could possibly be a good idea when the media specialist was taken out. It was a function of, we need to find $240,000, and if class size is gonna be the hill we're gonna die on, then other things have to go. As it relates to the media specialist, I think the number one thing is this place has to be open. In my view, it has to be open. So there's 3 ways to do that. Way number 1 is have a media specialist and a recess aide and no para. That way the recess aide is outside with the kids at lunch. The media specialist is here, has no duties that would take her listen to me, take he or she out of the media, and so it's operational full-time. That's one possibility. Second possibility is you have the media specialist and the para who is currently in. That para helps with recess. Media specialist is still here. It is more expensive to do that. In fact, I think that is the most expensive way to go. But the place is open in essence 24/7, and it's available to kids. Third option is you keep the para who's here. You hire the recess specialist. The recess aide, recess specialist. Well, would not like that job. I could be a specialist in recess, but that would be the least expensive, because now we're not pulling the paraprofessional who's here currently out to do recess.
But the para, last year when we made that really awful decision or painful decision to no longer have the media center specialist, it was I'll speak for myself, it was my understanding that the para would be in the library, and that would be her focus, as a woman. But she has been, because of the situation with their being such, because of the job market, there aren't a lot of substitutes. So this para, unbeknownst to us, he didn't know what would happen, has been told to substitute teaching, and I can see that happening again. So I think that option is. Can I interject? Sure. We the conversation has been about a media center specialist being a person who can keep the library open. The there were so many other things that she did educationally for students, for curriculum, and for teachers in education that we don't have as well. So I know that the most noticeable thing to everybody is the media center is closed, but there was much more of an impact to the school and to the children by just having a paraprofessional checking books in and out. And I hope you are all aware of that.
And the reality is that you would need you need a media specialist to be able to teach the classes on research, on sort of teaching the other teachers, et cetera. Is that
Right.
correct?
And what we had, it's not the person, it's the role that she played. But when we got it reinstated, we did not have a media center para here for a few years. And then the board of ed at the time, I don't know if Jeff, you were on it at the time.
Yeah.
We looked for a special person who had teaching experience and the license of a media center specialist that could do the technology integration. So that person was doing two roles for us that other school districts have two separate people for. She was very, very critical. That role was very, we were lucky to find who we had. But I think it's really worth noting that there's much more than a librarian missing.
Yeah, I'll second what Sue said, just from a personal perspective, because my son was here when she was here, and there were so many things that were going on in here other than checking out books.
We had a student here last week who talked about the Innovation Center.
Yeah.
We were so excited by what was happening for students, and that we can't do with a paraprofessional in the media center. She can't teach, she can't make curriculum decisions.
And last year, the decision was to put the barest minimum in, and it was, I mean, it's frankly an embarrassment.
So just to, so why are we having this conversation today? I think Jeff has demonstrated in the fall that if you freeze the staff, you pay them what you're contractually obligated to, and then you recognize there's degree changes, there's longevity, there's things, that pushes your increment all on its own, that and insurance, above 3%. It takes you about 3.25% to just do that. So then you have to say, well, is special ed going up this year or is it not going up this year? And then you say absolutely everything else that has to happen. That's why we're bringing you 4.2 or 4 point whatever it is now, it's 3.99%. So when last year we brought you 6 something, then we did this horse trading, you got it down to 2.88%, 0.5% below what the minimum cost for paying your employees is. And that got cut in half. So this budget is 1.44 greater than the previous year. And that's why you have such very difficult decisions to make. How do we continue to try to bend your costs so that you don't say, oh, well, no matter what happens, it's got to be 3.5 every year, year after year after year. It is 3.5 year after year in some other districts, but here it's averaged over 10 years. It's averaged 1.67.
1.67.
So you got to pay your bills. The substitute issue is an issue in all schools now. So if you, as I think you should, restore the media specialist, the media center position, you don't necessarily want to eliminate the pair because you're still going to have a sub need, and you have a very fine person there who's so flexible and able to do those things. The high school has not had a librarian, a media specialist, for 5 years because it got cut. And it's staggering to me that you have one of the elite high schools in the state of Connecticut. You have the 8th highest SAT scores out of more than 200 high schools in Connecticut, and there's no media specialist. It's crazy, but it's a reality. But you also have to bear in mind that we're looking here, we're asking for the town for up close to $700,000. If Barlow goes at 0, it's also $794,000. So you're looking at $1.5 million if you do, basically nothing. And guess what? The rules of school funding apply to Barlow just like they do to Keller and Staples. So they're gonna need that 3%. And last year they went negative by 0.44. So there can be some budget design at the high school because of declining enrollment. But the further you go in areas of expertise and discipline, the harder it is to. So you can't say, oh, here's 5th grade. We used to have 120 kids in 6 sections. Now we're going to have 97 sections, so 97 kids. So let's just pull sections in. At the high school, you have to start doing this by saying we're going to take 0.2 of English, 0.2 of math, 0.2 of world. So they've got a really tough task ahead at the high school, which is to manage that budget in light of declining enrollment without compromising the quality. But it does bear a weight on how the decisions you guys have to make here also. So I think you should, at this point in your process, say, let's entertain everything. Let's not just rule it out. What about the PE para? What value could that bring back? Can we afford it when we get to the end of it? The media specialist for middle schoolers? Why did you cut it, Tom? Because you went from 2.88 to 1.44. I didn't cut it. I recommended it because we're trying to do the least damage to the program at that point. But I think you should restore it. Yeah. And by the way, the technology assistant, remember this budget there's a tech assistant in this building, there's a tech assistant at the elementary school. It eliminates one of those positions, and the survivor on the island has to go back and forth. So you can't rely on that person to do any kind of fill-in or sponge-up activities either.
I have one more thing to say. If you restore the media center specialist, in the budget is a recess aide. That recess aide, if I have a media center specialist and the para here, and the para still does the outside duty, then that recess aide could be repurposed to the PE aide. I mean, it's just a possibility.
I don't see the media aid in the budget.
The paraprofessional, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the 2220 section, and which is the media services, and
Oh, I
you'll
see.
only see the paraeducator there because the certified staff members in the 1100 that you just went through already.
Okay, so we have, again, these are not decisions for tonight, but we need to decide, there's the issue of what do we do here? We know what we have in the budget. I think when we go to the Board of Finance, whatever decisions we collectively make here, I think it's in our collective best interest, and the Board of Finances too, to understand if there's anything that's gonna be cut out of here, what is the impact of that decision? Rather than just say, well, how about this much? And then have that group vote on it. I think they need to know, if you cut this, if you cut $100,000, we're gonna outline to you what the impact of that $100,000 cut is. We didn't do that last year. We haven't done that actually in a number of years, but I think we're at a point where we need to do that if we're doing our job as a responsible board, so that they understand. I mean, they don't want to see education go down the drain. There's nothing in it for anyone to see our educational system be damaged. But there is a balancing act that has to take place between what the town can afford to pay and the monies that come in. In a document that they were kind enough to send me, there was a part there that said anticipated new revenues coming in. It's a zero. And so this isn't just about the education budget for the town, this is about how we as a town are gonna move forward. And, for Katie, who wasn't there, and for the people here, one of the board members for Reading made a very heartfelt and honest assessment that I thought was right on, and that is homes are gonna be reassessed here in a year or two. I've heard more than one story about how what people paid for their home and what their home is now worth based upon what's going on in the market, which means reassessment is going to drop the value of that home, which will reduce the income that comes in from that home as far as taxes go. So this is a very real problem. And you throw in the apportionment change, where we're currently at 42%, in about 5 years we're gonna be 53%. And we're gonna have rising student costs, which will make the bill just that much difficult to deal with. So, we have some other things to do. It is 9:31. Tom asked me to keep this to 2 hours.
Well, I think when you're really doing brain work like this, if you go into 3 hours, you just start to turn into jello. You keep going if you like. I would like to draw the board's attention again to this handout that I gave you last time. And I do have a few extra copies that I'll put on the back table when we're done. Scott put this together for us. It was an object view of the budget, what we proposed in front of you, and what was approved 5 years ago in 16-17. Because some of the items that we started the evening with that you wanted to look at, say, maintenance contracts, 430, cleaning and repair, 431. John, I have another copy for you.
John, need a copy?
I just ask you, when you're thinking about some of these big dollar amounts catch your eye. We do want to explain them to you, but I also want to say, so maintenance contract, Jeff highlighted it, as he should, because it's more than it's $106,000 that we're asking for the 2 schools. That's 430. 5 years ago, it was $132,000. We pulled a lot of cash out of that line. 430, what was the other one you were? 431 is cleaning and repair. 5 years ago, it was $116,000. We're asking for 90. I think instructional supplies was 611, or was it 613? Instructional supplies, it was $100,000, $99,900, $90,700. That I just ask that we use this as a barometer of, even if it sounds like a lot, is it a lot? And then remember, we're trying to plan for 885 students. So when you start dividing down, 885 kids, 180 days, I think for instructional supplies, we get down to 22 cents a day or something. It sounds like a lot, but it isn't. We also are going to want to, explain to you some of the other things that are in here because they got past the do you absolutely need it test, like in the technology section. You're going to see you have to replace some of your laptops. They're 6, 7, 8 years old. Google says, no, we're not supporting those anymore, and we need to have enough technology to administer the Smarter Balance, the state mandated assessment. So there's some things there. Just it might be part of your homework assignment just to review that.
Okay. I think what we'll do because there is only so much of this, Brian, you can do at one setting. I'd like to suggest that, once again, I ask the board members to continue to dig through this book, highlight concerns, send me your questions. That way I can compile them and get with Tom and Scott and the building administrators and
That's very helpful to us to get board member questions.
and make sure that, what, we can, make our time here worthwhile with digging into the stuff that really matters. If that's okay with everybody else, then we'll move, I think, I don't know what I did with my agenda, but I think it's probably public comment. But I'm not. Yeah.
You can talk to anybody first, go ahead.
Hi, Ian Morning Glory Drive. Thank you. This is a critical time of the year for our elected officials and administrators. I want to read the public comment I had for the December 10th meeting. I haven't heard anything or seen anything in the minutes, but number one was in regard to 4-year-olds attending kindergarten. The state of Connecticut has a law that children need to be 5 years old by either the 31st of December or the 1st of January. I suggest people redshirt. I suggest people keep your kids home if they are not developmentally ready for school. There are 50 states. Ours has the youngest enrollment, so that's why we critically have more behavioral issues in the elementary school. We have more mental health issues ongoing because our kids are just simply developmentally unready for school. Number two, inappropriate health and wellness education. I think I came last time and said I had mentioned about sex ed, and that was my concern. And there are many parents across the state that are concerned that their boards of education are adopting sex ed. There are legislators that are very concerned that sex ed is being pushed down into prepubescent children, into their view, into their education. One or more legislators have questioned this, and they now have a health and sex education requirements Office of Legislative Research report. I put copies on the back table. I suggest that our Board of Education review this, because there isn't anything in the law that says children need to have X education at X grade. There's the law, and then there's guidelines. So I don't know why, I don't know who, if Cade suggested it, but it's wrong. And it's so wrong that back in the 2000s, when it was first coming through, a doctor, Miriam Grossman from Massachusetts, she's a psychiatrist and an MD. She wrote a book called You're Teaching My Child What? It's no longer being published, but you can pick up old copies. The bottom line is our children are being sexually groomed. So we have sex problems with the fact that the children are being taught younger and younger when they don't really need to have that. There's another book I recommend to parents, The Hurried Child. So David Alpine wrote this book in 1981. His concerns were curriculum, that the kids would have curriculum, that there would be curriculum disabled children. So what we have in Common Core is that the Common Core pushes the curriculum down on the children, down to kindergarten. Children are not ready to read in kindergarten, maybe one or two. I know very few children are ready, and they shouldn't be required that. And what is the Band-Aid that the school districts are using? SRBI or RTI, whichever calling it right now. So that's the Band-Aid. So your child has a problem. So now they're labeled as having a problem. I have a child that had problems. And once he had a behavioral optometrist review his vision and saw the 3 problems he had and remedied it, well, he's graduating this year from high school. So parents need to know, if your child is having certain issues, maybe take them to an optometrist to see that they get their vision checked. They're little boys and little girls, they're not adults. They shouldn't be sitting in classes for long periods of time. I'm very excited to hear that you're keeping the recess aides, and definitely need to get somebody back in this room. And I'm disgusted to hear that Barlow does not have anybody in their media center or library. That's another wrong thing. Critical that the kids can just naturally socialize in this room, and it's not going on this year. So I will definitely be writing you about that issue. And there's only so much money, as people may know or may not know, the Board of Finance gives the Board of Ed a lump sum. It's up to the board, to decide what is the best thing. And if you have to cut some staff, that's what needs to be done. We can say how many kids are in school right now, but in 2016 and 17, there were more children. So we can play games, the coconut game. We're all here for the kids of Easton. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Nikki Chowdowie again, Staples Road. Actually glad that the sex, quote unquote, sex education was brought up, because I actually wanted to say earlier that my son, who's in 4th grade, had the sexual assault awareness and prevention talk today, actually, with Mrs. Desiderio, and I wanted to thank you for it, Kim, because he came home, and these are conversations that we have in general. It's about proper touching and improper, if someone touches you, what to do, and because these kids do need to be aware of that, and hopefully these conversations are going on at home like we do, but when it's taught in the school, it brings more validity to it for the kids, and they understand, oh yeah, like we should have these conversations. And we had a great conversation tonight about everything that was discussed, and I wish there was a health teacher. You want to add something to the budget, like I think at that age it's so important to have those discussions, and he talked about the fact that he has to shower more and all that kind of stuff, which again, we have those conversations.
Yes, please do.
But it's not just sex education anymore, it's comprehensive health education or abstinence only education. And I was lucky enough to be a health teacher up at Barlow, and it's very important for these kids to have that. So I actually did want to say thank you for that class they had today, because we had a really good conversation at home as a family. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I'll follow up with that, is that I think I mentioned last time, we've been notified every time something like this has occurred for our classrooms, whether sex education, if we thought it wasn't appropriate and we didn't want our kids there, we had the opportunity to take them out. That being said, the number of children, 7 to 10, who are assaulted each year, myself included, is high. Don't think that they don't need to know. They need to know. Please. Thank you very much, Kim, for having it. Number 2, going forward, you've always been, I felt like you've had our back as a parents. I feel like you've always been on our side. I feel like you really, this year, more so than others, I feel like it doesn't seem like there's a lot of room, and it feels like we gave up a lot last year to stay within this budget that was thrown at us and felt very random and not at all looking at the realities of what the education's cost. I would really and like I said, I know that you do, but I want to reiterate, please stand up for us. Please stand up for our kids. We will do our best to have parents come and support you, but we cannot take this down very much more than it is. We do need this. I can't, the idea of taking away the para on top of, I think you're just like, you're trying to change Band-Aids. Trying to go, you take away the library para on top and get back the media specialist, you're just, you're swapping Band-Aids. We need to fix this situation and removing the para and you need the recess aide, you need the para, you need the specialist, in order to make this place work. So I'm asking you to stand up for, and we will do our best to get people to stand up with you.
Thank you. Yes.
Tara Donnelly, Gottlieb, Delaware Road. Can you just repeat the report that's in the budget for the stop and start time for time the school day starts?
Oh, the name of the study?
Norwalk.
The Norwalk one.
The one that if I understand correctly, there was a line item in the budget to conduct a similar test.
Right.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And the dollar amount for that?
4,000.
Okay. Now, is that study specific to Easton, and is it a logistic study, or is it something, because I think you mentioned that there were like 11 other towns that have done it, is it something that's so general, can we leverage off what has been done?
Yeah, and so I don't know if you want to get Q&A, but an actual consultative study would cost you $60,000-$70,000. We're just looking for enough cash to pull together stakeholders and to do the logistics to benefit from all the folks who've already done this work. I would direct people to look at, just go to the Norwalk Public Schools or Google it, because they did a really fine 2-year study. And they're a city, but the basic research underlying it won't be any different.
The $4,000 is the bare bones.
Yeah.
Well, it's $4,000 here, it's $4,000 in Reading, it's $4,000 at the high school.
Okay.
At the high school.
Thank you.
Annie, need another turn?
Yes, I need another turn.
Well, just make it a short.
Very quick. The Connecticut General Assembly starts February 5th. We had great concern last year with the regionalization of schools. That has to do with budget, so just be aware, if you are on Hands Off Our Schools on Facebook. If not, please join. Repeal Common Core is another point. We have great legislators who are going to try to work on things in the next year to give more freedom to our local school districts, which may, help free up some money and make some changes. There's also a federal bill in to end Fed Ed, and that would be a prayer of mine so that we can return to local control of school districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Christine Calvert, North Street. I just want to thank the board and the administrators. They spent an enormous amount of time. The other night they were at Barlow till 11:15. So I appreciate all the time and effort you do put into our budget season on our children.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, any board member comment?
I'll just reiterate what I always say this time of year during the budget season.
Okay.
Is that, and I said last time, is that it's so important for the Board of Finance to know how you feel about the budget. And going to the meetings, the finance meetings, once we know when it is, I don't know if we.
March 4th, I think.
March 4th, but also to send emails to all of the members, personal emails to all of the members of the Board of Finance, because they do listen to them, and, or they do react to them, so it's really, really important. So, thank you all for coming tonight as well.
And I just say thank you to everyone who did come tonight. Christine, thank you. You were also there until 11, right? And I see you at these meetings again and again, the members of the PTO, so many familiar faces. Adam, you're here all the time. Thank you to everyone who shows up consistently. I would also just sort of echo the sentiment of please reach out. It's too late if it's at that meeting. People need to understand that while people come to Easton for the schools and love the schools because we have amazing administrators and we have great teachers and frankly, a great population of kids. We also are at the breaking point. This is not sustainable. What we have here in the budget that we reviewed tonight, we'll continue to review, is the bare minimum. It really can't be cut more. This is what we need to make sure that we can sustain Easton as a place where education is truly excellent and to do right by our students and frankly the community in general. So that message, that status quo, satisfaction is going to drop off precipitously if we don't do this budget. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks. Gretchen, anything? Jenny?
Yes, I put it together. One of the things that struck me the most in studying this budget, and I say studying, it's really more trying to make heads or tails of it, and Jeff was kind enough to tutor me on a few of the sections.
Several coffees, I think you got caffeine whacked.
Was the page about the Easton enrollment projected by grade to 2029. And we keep talking about financial constraints, the needs of the town, and I feel like the word cut comes up, that there's sort of a negative approach almost to budget season. What are we going to cut? It's almost like this inevitability. And when I look at these numbers, I see the only conclusion to come to is that we need to be building capacity. I mean, when you look at the increase, the projected increases, and I don't know if we can make copies of this available to folks at the next meeting, but you know, when I look ahead to 2022, 2023, and there's a projected 104 kindergartners coming in, and we're still on this revolving door of faculty. If there's a small class, we reduce the teacher ahead of them, but we increase it behind them. I don't know, the phrase pound wise and penny foolish comes to mind. You know, if we're looking at making investments that are going to serve us well down the road, possibly reduce special education costs. I think one of the best phrases I heard coming from public comment was from my friend, dear friend Devin Weibel, who said, you know, kids in classes with teachers in smaller settings who know them are safer in school. And status quo comes to mind, and then that segues me to thinking about some of the horrible disasters that have happened in schools around our country, school shootings, and I think that some of those things happen when we accept the status quo. When things are quiet and seemingly okay, and we're not investing in kids, we're not making sure that we're investing in the programs that keep us with our eyes and ears on them in the best environments possible. So when we're thinking about things like the media center specialist, it goes far beyond can kids come in the door and check out a book. It's are they passing by this room on a daily basis from class to class, and are the lights on, and is it a hub of activity and energy that pulls kids in and pulls them together? And I think we just need to keep that in mind with every line item that we go through. You know, how are we building capacity? How are we keeping kids safe? And how are we maintaining and improving our programs that are going to, as Tom always says, bring those little kids from where they are to who they are yet to be. And how we have a conversation and listen to Tom talk in the beginning of the school year about where you see technology in the future for our kids, and to not have a media specialist, which is a specific educational endorsement. You know, it's not just a teacher coming in to take over this role. There's specific qualifications and coursework that are required to be a media specialist, and how that elevates our program at the middle school and prepares those kids for the research and the information technology that they're going to be exposed to at the high school is unconscionable to me. So I'll stop there and just say that I hope that we can have a conversation about discrete math when we get together.
So I do want to say one thing, and that's what I was gonna say. You know, at the high school level in this district, you know, we do offer many options for children, you know, AP and advanced courses, and that we don't offer that elsewhere. or we don't offer enough of it, in my mind. And that's severely lacking for a district that considers itself elite. So, that's something that I think should be considered going forward.
February 11th. February 11th. Did I say February 11th? That is our next budget meeting. We'll ask the board members as early as you can get questions to me. That will allow central office to be able to give them the time that they need to be able to answer stuff, which is good. And there's a lot of work still to be done, but I've got a great board, and I know they're up to the task. So we look forward to seeing you and all your friends on February 11th.
What's
Okay?
what's the date of the Board of Finance meeting? The first
March 4th.
presentation, sorry?
March 4th. Get there early, so you can attend.
Is there any public comment?
It's not that day.
No,
Yeah, how do we public comment?
Motion.
Board of Finance.
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Actually, that's a good point.
Motion.
By the way,
Goldstein, second.
there is no public comment in the Board of Finance